and welcome back to Much Ado About Rugby, where we chat about everything rugby. And today, yes, we are doing that episode again where we review some games, but also reviewing the whole Nations Cup that's happening this autumn. We've already had 3 games this weekend, and some more exciting than the others, I think. But yeah, essentially what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be running over the games and also commenting on each team and whether they will fly or whether they will flop. So a bit of a game about it. And at the end of each analysis, I guess we're just going to say which team will do well in the competition overall, or whether they'll fly, or which team will do worse in the competition and whether they'll flop a little bit. So brief comment on that at the end. And then we're also going to comment a bit on the women's rugby as well for the first time ever on our podcast. We're going to chat a little bit about that. Obviously, we didn't watch the game, but it was very exciting. England versus France there, and then we're going to start doing a new weekly thing at the end of each episode. We're going to start doing a rugby thought of the day or question of the day, which should be something interesting for you to go and ponder when we leave you at the end of each episode. So, of course, we will start by just jumping into the first game. I should probably mention, though, of course, I am joined by Maliki once again. Maxon, unfortunately, can't be with us today. He's busy, as per usual. And we are currently situated at 2 different locations in the British Isles. So I am in Twickenham, as you can see behind me, if you're watching on the YouTube. Obviously, HQ, great place. Mal, little less important where you are, but when you go through it.
Live from the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, of course. Big win for Ireland this weekend, so had to fly over here to record the episode. Definitely not just a Zoom background.
No, all good, all good fun. So yeah, if you do have any more suggestions for any other backgrounds that you might like us to use, we're going to start using these a bit more. It makes a bit more interesting viewing, doesn't it? But yeah, without further ado, we'll go straight into the first game, the most important game of the weekend, from my point of view anyway. We had England versus Georgia. Now, England won this game 40 points to 0. Maliki, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, as Eddie Jones said at the beginning or in some interview before the game, he said that Georgia have the best pack in the world, apparently, which seems a bit of a rogue comment, but we absolutely destroyed them in the pack throughout the whole game. I think that's kind of shown by Jamie George getting a hat-trick. So that's pretty mental. So, yeah, really great performance by the England, and I think that's a strong start.
3 mauls, 3 tries.
Yeah, really good start to the Autumn Nations Cup for England. But who were some standout players for you, Ed?
I'm not sure really if there were any proper standout players, but I think obviously Jamie George with his hat-trick probably counts as that, and he won player of the match, obviously, which is obviously well-deserved. First ever England hooker, I think, to score a hat-trick, which is really exciting. But I just think it was really interesting seeing a few debutants, seeing a few new faces in the England squad, Eddie Jones giving a chance to some players who, we might not have ever even considered really who would have started for England. I think the key one here is Ollie Lawrence. And I think, to have Henry Slade pass you a ball for your first touch of the ball in an England shirt on your first start for England, I think, did bloody well to catch it, really, honestly. It was a horrible pass. I'm not sure if anyone else saw it, but I think it's just interesting to watch them play. I think in different conditions, in drier conditions, I think England would have 100% had a bit more tries and a few more tries in them probably. I think it was a bit disappointing, honestly, to see the second half almost deteriorate because of the weather. But at the same time, not conceding. It's a great start for England, and great to see the likes of people like Max Malins and Joe Marchant getting a run out. And do you want to comment a bit on Jack Willis, Mal?
Yes, my boy Jack Willis. He has been all throughout the Premiership season bloody amazing. This turnover king, getting like 46 turnovers, more than double anyone else in the whole Premiership. And also, he managed to get like 8 tries in the Premiership. proving he is an all-round better player than Benel Maxon, who is pretty convinced that he's not. But yeah, he obviously got his try on his debut, which proves I'm right. So I'd like to just say, yeah, that. But yeah, he played really well. He got a good few turnovers. Didn't play the whole game. I don't know who came on for him. I can't remember. But I think, yeah, I definitely liked the look of him, and I
I
think
think
I
it was
probably
Ben
prefer
Earl.
him over Sam Underhill, to be honest. But I think it very much depends on the game, because I saw a comment before about do you want Sam Underhill, who's going to be smashing people back in the tackles, or do you want Jack Willis, who's going to be more of that? Yeah, he's very good defense with his turnovers, and also potentially a bit more. I don't know, maybe a bit more attacking threat. I don't know. They're pretty similar in attack, but it's really to do about the turnovers or really smashing them back in like the dominant tackles. But yeah, he had a really good start, and I thought it's really good that Eddie Jones is giving all these guys who don't have many caps, these younger guys, a good run out and get them some experience, especially against a team like Georgia, who obviously aren't the best. So hopefully, I'd like to see Jack Willis in next week's game. I'm not sure who England are playing, but Ireland maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, I thought that he was really good.
I think we're playing Ireland, yeah. But yeah, lots to look forward to in that department. I thought someone who did have a really good game as well was Ellis Genge. Just making solid hits up front, scrummaged really, really well, especially against, supposedly the best pack in the world. But I think, yeah, I just to comment on Georgia, actually, I think, they didn't do badly. There's nothing you can really do when a team's just that much better than you. And they did have a couple of occasions of, half decent kicking into touch or whatever, running. The scrum in the second half seemed more stable, seemed to, make England a little bit more wary about them. And I think it was shown in the last, what was it, 2 minutes of time. They had their longest phase of possession and their most amount of phases in play, which is really, really interesting, because it just shows that maybe people thought they didn't have the fitness. Maybe, I noticed the commentators saying that they were out on their feet before half time, because England were just running them ragged. But I thought that did show, like, maybe they're not as bad as fitness wise as we first thought, and it was just simply because England are that much better in the quality department that the scoreline was what it was. Also, good to see them trying to go for points by kicking to the corner and not taking the 3 points that were on offer quite a lot of the time. So yeah, to wrap up that game, 40-0 to England. What do we think will happen to England this competition? Do you think they'll flop, or do you think they'll fly, Mal?
I think England is an obvious fly. I think it's going to be between probably them and France for who are going to win it. Yeah, I think they're probably really, really good form at the moment, bouncing back after the loss in the World Cup final. I think they're winning the Six Nations and just pushing on with good performances, getting the informed guys from the Premiership in. It's making, I think, good decision and by Eddie, and I think Eddie's also playing the teams against to win the matches rather than just playing the best players all round. Like by playing Will Stewart and Ellis Genge at front row, who are really big, powerful front row. So I thought that was good. But I'm assuming you're saying England are a fly as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I think off the back of a Six Nations win, and very little to worry about in that department, really, apart from really against France. Yeah, I think England are just building on what we already know they can do, and bringing in those new players, like you said, is certainly helping to, just make them a better team overall and increase the depth, I think. But what about Georgia? I noticed, so they're talking about the competition as a whole. Georgia, Matt Dawson on the radio yesterday was commenting on them, saying that, this is their first chance to get 3 or 4 solid games against tier 1 opposition, which they would never had before, apart from possibly in a World Cup where they would have had a tough group, but still not really something they've had before. This is their chance to really prove themselves. So from a Georgian perspective, even if you lost all of your games, did you think that it would count as a flop? Or if you put up a good performance, I mean, the one against England wasn't necessarily good, but let's say they play Ireland and Wales, do you think, and they scored a few tries, they had a couple of games like Italy have done in the Six Nations, do you think that would count as a flop still, or do you think that would count as a fly for them?
I think with obviously being, as you said, being the first of their tier 1 games in a row, I think if they're able to get the against the big teams, if they're able to lose by like not a significant amount, obviously they lost to England by a lot, but if say Wales, Ireland, Scotland, if they're able to, with those kind of teams, if they're able to have a close game and then maybe even beat Italy or Fiji, then I would say that is a fly for them. But I can't see them doing that, to be honest. So I think it really depends on how. I mean, I'm really interested in see how they play against Wales next week, because obviously Wales have not been the best of form. So if Georgia can get a win there, that would be absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I would have to say they're a bit of a flop for me.
Hilarious. Yeah, it would be be a giant killing for sure. I think, it depends if you're Georgian or not, really. I think they'll just be happy to play tier 1 against tier 1 nations. But at the same time, from a point of view where we're English and we expect to do well and win games, if you're not winning games, then you're kind of flopping, aren't you? So I guess we could call them a flop
Yep.
for this competition, our prediction. Right, moving on to the next game, we have Ireland beating Wales at the Aviva, 32-9. So,
Boys.
from my point of view, not the most exciting game in the world. I didn't think really both teams performed to the best that they can. I mean, we've already seen with Wales that they've had difficulties in the last few games. This is their 6th game that they've lost on the trot, and Ireland obviously only scoring 2 tries out of those 32 points. I mean, that means they are coming away from the 22 with points, but at the same time, against a weak down Wales side, I'd like to see more tries from them. Matt, what did you make of it?
I thought at first when you're watching the game, it was a bit of like just ticking the board over with the penalties, and then obviously getting try at the end. So I think the win wasn't as convincing as it may have seemed as when you were watching the game. But I think looking back at the score, I looked back at the last night, and to see 32-9 again Ireland versus Wales is quite a big scoreline. Like it's quite like you wouldn't really have expected something like that like a year ago, or between if England had beaten Wales that much, you would be like, yeah, they destroyed them. I think that's what we said before as well. But I thought Ireland, although they weren't in the best of form, in their top form, I think they are getting a bit back to where they're working. They're on an upward cycle, I guess you could say. I think they're performing a bit better. Again, James Lowe, my boy James Lowe in the team, he had a great performance. And yeah, I think it's looking good,
Yeah.
looking better for Ireland. But unfortunately, I could not say the same for Wales. Don't really know what's happening there. But yeah, what do you think's still going wrong with Wales?
Well, I think it's coach. I don't think Wayne Pivac's the one, mate. Honestly, I think they're missing Sean Edwards as a defensive coach, because this is a Wales team that last year won a Grand Slam. One of the most difficult things to do as a Northern Hemisphere team in the Six Nations. Like, that's impressive. And the moment Warren Gatland's gone and Sean Edwards has gone, they've suddenly, there's always going to be a phase of rebuilding, but, losing 32-9. Uh, the England match 33-30, I think, flattered them. I think it's just I don't really know. I think they're just missing that bit of dynamism that especially in defence, the amount of penalties that are being conceded. I've already said this in the previous episode. You can't concede that many penalties and expect to win the game, and it's shown because Ireland have kicked so many goals. And to comment on Ireland, I think I thought Jamison Gibson Park had a decent game at scrum half. I thought James Lowe had a very good game on the wing and got his try on debut, obviously. But other than that, I didn't really see much from anyone. Possibly James Ryan had a half-decent game, but I didn't really see much from most of the Irish players. I think they're missing Ringrose. I think they're missing Lama. I thought Hugo Keenan, I think they're missing that dynamism of fullback. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would
I
agree.
thought they played all right.
I thought Billy Burns was actually all
But
right when he
nothing
came
that
on.
would worry me if they went. I thought Billy Burns was okay, but at the same time, chucked a couple of dodgy passes, didn't he? And he's another one. Okay, so this is what confuses me about the eligibility stuff, because if Billy Burns was that good, he would have been selected to play for England. So why are Ireland selecting him? There must be someone better in Ireland than
Mm,
Billy Burns. I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive, because if England aren't picking him because he's not good enough for us, then he's clearly not good enough to play international rugby.
yeah,
And he's a good rugby player, there's no doubt. But I just think it's kind of the same with people like Jameson Gibson Park. Like, just because he plays for Leinster, he played for the Hurricanes for 3 or 4 years and never came anywhere near the All Blacks. I
yeah,
mean, and that's why he's now playing for Ireland, because he couldn't make it into that international side. I don't know. I think it's just
yeah.
a bit counterintuitive to pick players that haven't been picked for an international side already.
Yeah, I think with England, we were saying this before, how England's just depth is just actually unreal. Like I think it's on par with All Blacks and maybe even South Africa. Like those three teams just have so much depth in their positions that like other teams. And I think maybe because it helps just because their league, their what can I say, their domestic league, their domestic competitions is maybe
Hmm.
one of the strongest compared to the Pro 14. Like it's just not as strong. Like they've got three teams in Ireland, three teams in Wales. They just aren't able to pump out as many high quality players, and so I know it's a bit annoying for some, or it might not seem as good for some teams that Ireland are getting players like James Lowe jumping in, who obviously are not Irish. But I think it's going to increase the quality of
Yeah.
rugby for them, and it actually makes them competitive, which is what you want to see at the end of the day. You don't, well, obviously you want to see your team destroying, but it's good to see the whole competition quite competitive and not just one team completely running away with it every year. But I don't know. One thing I would think about, I've literally written down nothing for Wales for the players because I couldn't think of any standout
Yeah.
players that there were in the team. I have actually got an interesting fact, which is Wales made 10 meters in the first 40 minutes of the whole game, which is awful. So I don't know what's going on
10.
there,
That's
but
appalling. That's appalling.
yeah, I would going to our
That's
flying
just
flop. I
not
have to say
competitive
Wales looked
at all.
a
I
flop.
think there was one moment, yeah, but there was one moment in the game where I thought Wales might have a chance and might show some dynamism, and they ran a move off the back of a line out, and Josh Adams got it and ran the outside arc, and the ball ended up being passed like into touch, a lot by a bad pass. But I thought if they can just execute a move like that, then they'll score. And
Yeah,
for some reason they're not executing. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. They're just not executing. They're committing penalties and knocking the ball on a lot. But yeah, I have to agree with you on a flop for Wales. I have actually written down. I think Ireland England next weekend. I think England will win
mm,
because of the strength and depth that England have. But I think it will be close. That doesn't mean to say that I don't think Ireland will do well. I think they'll definitely come behind England in the group, but they'll they'll fly. I think in the
yeah,
grand scheme of things, they'll come top two in the pool.
yeah.
So
I've put I've put Ireland as a fly as well, and I think particular shout out to James Lowe and Caelan Doris as well. I think they're definitely two players to watch out for Ireland. You see
yeah,
James Lowe really good on the wing, and I think Caelan Doss is just really solid. Play back all the back row. I think he was playing 8 at the weekend, and I think he had a really good game. I think he got man of the match. So I think they do have good players. They just need to sort some stuff out, and I think they're on their way up.
100%. But we did already mention the depth of New Zealand, but that depth has been cancelled out a little bit this weekend. We had a Tri-Nations match, New Zealand versus Argentina in Australia, and the All Blacks have lost for the first time ever in their history to Argentina. So congratulations to them. Massive standout performances from the likes of Pablo Matera and co. That guy is an absolutely stand-up bloke. You could see from the first minute of the game that he was so up for the contest, and the All Blacks probably had an air of arrogance about them. So
Yeah.
Argentina have shut them down, which is good. They need that every once in a while, the All Blacks, because sometimes they do get a bit cocky. And I think they would have thought the only reason they lost to Australia the week before is because of all the carding and stuff like that. So great to see Argentina win that. Mal, any comments on that game briefly before we move on?
I just got another interesting fact about that game. This was actually the 29th time that Argentina and the All Blacks have met, and it's obviously the first time that Argentina have won out of those games, which is the same as the first time Ireland beat the All Blacks. It was also their 29th game against the All Blacks in which they won their first. So if you're into conspiracies or superstition, this could be a good year for Argentina. So I don't know. I think beating the All Blacks is very impressive, although it was at neutral ground. But yeah, I think it's good to see that they're actually competing in the Tri-Nations and not being left behind like we may have seen previously.
Yeah, I think Argentina, no, they definitely stepped to that game. They'd compete massively in the Six Nations if they were in the Six Nations. They would definitely have good games. You know, they've beaten Ireland. How long ago was that? The 2015 World Cup. They beat
Yeah.
Ireland in the quarters. So even then, even as far back as then, they were competing. And I just think, you know, to come and beat the All Blacks, Mario Ledesma's face after the game, or with about 2 minutes to go when they knew they were going to win, said it all. He was in absolute pieces. Bless him. But no, great win for Argentina there. And long may their good form continue.
Yep.
So moving on to the last of the Autumn Nations Cup games that happened this weekend, we had Italy playing in Fiorentina. They lost 17-28 to Scotland. Mal, initial comments on the game.
I think scoreline flattered Scotland a lot. I thought Italy were going to win. I thought Italy were impressive considering how they haven't won a Six Nation game in 27 games. I thought this was going to be the end of that kind of streak against those Six Nations sides. But yeah, annoyingly they didn't. I think they just have a problem. They just can't finish games. Italy are strong in the first half, but they just can't finish. I think it was seen against England. What it was like 10 something. It was really close, like really close against England. Then they got just battered. I just don't know what happened, but I thought Paolo Garbisi was really good in that game. Jay Pelledri was really good. He's been really proving himself. But I don't know if he got injured. I think he got taken off for an injury in that game. So hopefully he is able to play for the rest of the tournament, or it's not a serious injury or something, because he's really a standout player for Italy, and also just in general at the moment. I think he's really filled the boots of Parise.
They definitely need him. They definitely need him if they're going to continue to, well, even grow a little bit. I mean, he's standout for them. Commenting on Scotland, though, not the best performers, really. I was expecting a lot more from them, to be honest. I thought that, you know, the addition of Duncan Weir probably set them back a bit, although he did have quite a good game. His first cap in 4 years, bear in mind, is quite difficult, and he's been playing for Worcester, so not the highest quality of teams in the UK. But at the same time, you know, Scotland come out with a win. I think that's how many games have they won in
Fifth,
a
I think it's
row?
their fifth
Something like
game they've won in a row now. Something.
fifth or sixth. So Scotland are on some good form, and with the likes of Stuart Hogg and Johnny Gray, who we've already mentioned, and people like Hamish Watson, who are yet to come back into really good form, I think Scotland could be very dangerous in the weeks to come, and should definitely be a team to look out for. Um,
100%.
and with regards to Italy, I think I would only really like to judge them on the Fiji match. That's when we will see how good Italy actually are, because Fiji are that team that can either come out and play ridiculously good rugby and get a surprise win, or they're a team that can just flop again. But we'll come on to them in a minute. So with regards to Italy, how do you think they'll do in the competition? Do you reckon they'll flop, or do you reckon they'll fly?
After that performance, I think I want to say they could fly, but when I say fly, I mean they if they get a win, that counts as them flying because they they just don't.
They
I think
need one. They
yeah,
need one.
I think the only teams they beat recently, I had a look at their recent scores. They beat Canada, they destroyed Canada and Namibia in the World Cup, but they're just like not even close. So if they can beat one of the
Well, they're
Autumn
tier
Nations
tier three
teams,
sides.
yeah, I think if they can beat one of the Autumn Nations teams, it really is a good achievement for them. And I think they have got a lot of young guys coming in, as we said, Garbisi, Pelledri, etc. I think if they are building the foundations of a better squad, and hopefully, if they can get at least one win out of this competition, I think that's a really good achievement for them. So I put them down as a fly. And as well, yeah, I also put Scotland down as a fly. I think their form can't be ignored. And I think, yeah, if they obviously they didn't have the best game, I think they've got a few injuries. Like Jamie Ritchie went off for an injury. I think he went off for an
Yeah.
ACL and just didn't come back on. So that's
Mm.
a bit worrying because he's definitely one of the standout performers, and I think he's definitely in contest. He's contesting for one of those starting line spots at the moment because of his form. So I think both teams are looking good, especially Scotland.
Yeah, no, certainly a step up for Italy from what they were like against England in the Six Nations. I still just think they're a flop, mate. Honestly, I can't see them improving that much that they're going to win a game. So I've got them down as a flop personally. But Scotland I have down as a fly because I think even against France, they beat France in the Six Nations. That the only reason why France didn't win the Grand Slam was because of Scotland.
Yeah.
So I think Scotland France will be a really good game to look forward to, and one that I hope maybe Scotland can come out with a shock result, possibly. I don't know, very possibly. But let's quickly talk about now the Fiji France game that was cancelled, and whether these teams will flop or fly. Because obviously, I really thought this game would possibly be the most exciting game of the weekend. They're two extremely flair-filled sides. You got Randrada for Fiji. You've got Ntamak and Dupont. We've already spoken about all the French players, but you've got a whole host of amazing players to choose from that you could go and see there. Um, but yeah, in a more general way, because we can't really comment on how they played, obviously, in the tournament so far, because the game got cancelled because of COVID cases in the Fiji camp. What do we think of Fiji, and how do we think they'll do?
I just can't get the loss against Uruguay out of my head in the World Cup, to be honest. So for me, I think they're just not going to be consistent enough to be a strong contender in this competition. So I've gone for them as a flop. Although I don't know if Randrandra's injured at the moment because I think he got injured in the final of the Challenge Cup or something. So I don't know
Oh,
if he's there, then I think he'll have a big impact. But if he's not, then Fiji, goodbye Fiji.
I don't know. I think I've got them down as a fly. I think their performance against, I mean, you mentioned inconsistency. I think their performance against Wales in the World Cup completely, says that they can compete in this top level competition. And they've had results before, like long ago, and more recently, where they've really competed with sides like Ireland and Wales, and Scotland. So I really think that they're dangerous, and they shouldn't be underestimated. And they could go far in this competition. What about France, on the other hand, Mal? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, to be
Yeah,
honest.
have to be a fly. Obviously, I think they would have definitely got the win over Fiji today if they had played today. But yeah, I think obviously that they'll have to wait till next week. I don't know who they're playing next week. I think they're playing Scotland next week, so that'll be first game for them, which I think will be a close contest. So I think France will take it there, just because they've been in such good form and they just know what they're doing. It seems
Yeah.
they got good structure and plan. So I think France will be a fly, just because of their outstanding performance in their Six Nations, which they will be wanting to build on and go one better and actually win and compete. I think they're definitely the biggest competition to England.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more on that. But that basically sums up the Autumn Nations Cup and a bit of the Tri Nations that's happened this weekend. But there is one more game that happened that was quite important and a massive victory for us England fans. So that was in the women's rugby. So we had France versus England, just a women's friendly test. Obviously not that friendly in rugby, but that was down in Grenoble. And Mal, do you know the score, or do you want me to tell you?
Tell me the score. I actually don't know the score.
So it was England 33, France 10. Massive result there for England. It was 10-all at half time. So big second half display from the likes of Emily Scarrett and co. Um, Bringing England up to number one in the women's world rankings. So massively impressive, and long may it stay like that, because obviously we love England being number one, whether it's women's, men's, or whatever other sport it is. So keep going, the ladies, and look forward to watching a lot more of you as more of your games are televised on the BBC and other free and other television services. So I would 100% now consider watching an England game, knowing that we're the number one side in the world,
Yeah,
women's game.
100%.
Would you, Mal?
Yeah, I think they being one number one side in the world, it big. I don't know, big success. but but yeah, I think you can't deny that they've been outstanding. I think
Great success.
they won the Grand Slam 2 years in a row now, which is a ridiculous thing to do. Like, can't even think of any teams that have managed to do that in men's rugby recently. So I think they're really proving that the England women's side is really good, and yeah, it'd be interesting to watch them play, to be honest. But I actually don't know where it's televised or anything like that, so I have to look into that a bit more.
Yeah, no worries. I'm sure can find all sorts of information on the internet about the next games and what tests they're playing. So that about wraps everything up games-wise. However, obviously, as I said at the start of the episode, we have a rugby thought or a rugby question of the week now at the end of each episode. So my rugby thought of the week is whoever thought that Georgia were good at scrumming. Just something to think about. So that brings this episode to a close. Thank you very much for watching Much Ado About Rugby. If you ever want to check us out on the internet, our website is now fully up and running. You can find the link on our Instagram, which of course is tagged at Much Ado About Rugby. We also have Facebook, obviously, as I mentioned every episode, so do go and follow that if you don't follow that already. And we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, if you want to see our beautiful faces. So go check us out on all mediums and all platforms if you can and if you will. So thank you so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Rugby.